talking about TV families, another interview with Dave Sundstrom from The Good Stuff next on another episode of Retro Serial. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Retro Serial. I'm your host, E&C. I'm glad you could be joining us today for this really special episode. We have David Sundstrom. We do an interview with him today talking about TV families. And before we get to that interview, let me just encourage you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification, share it on your favorite social media. All those little things are little things for you, but they mean so much to us here on the channel. And if you're listening to this on podcast form, please go and give us an honest review and an honest rating, however you feel that we're doing. And if you want to go that one extra step and donate to this channel, we will be leaving a link in the description box below to our Buy Me a Coffee, where you can donate some of your hard-earned funds to see this program grow. We're dedicated to bringing you the best in interviews and the best in nostalgia, all about growing up Generation X. So if you're so inclined to do that, please do. And now to our interview. We are in session here with Dave Sundstrom. Dave, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I wanted to have you back on the show because I think the last time you were on the show, because of all the technical difficulties I was having on my end, we really only had half of a conversation, and it was a conversation I desperately wanted to finish up with you. So thank you so much for being on the program. You're the nicest guy in real life. I was just talking to you. Yeah, I mean, you sound so nice on your videos too, and I think that's why you have so many subscribers. And it's the real thing. You're not faking it. I was just talking to you off the air for just a second, and you were just as nice then. It wasn't like you're some jerk. Like, oh, could you hurry this up?
Tell that to my boys. They think I'm a grump from sometimes.
Well, we all can be that way, right? We can all be that way. Well, you know what? It's interesting because I was just on your YouTube page before I jumped on here, and I did not know. I had heard you mention in passing on a couple of occasions that you talk about music too, but you have a music channel as well.
I do. So it was all on the main channel for the longest time, right? But then I decided that, there are times when a particular topic will involve music and it makes sense to keep it on my main channel. But there are other times when if I'm just talking about like an 80s hair metal band or something like that, maybe it makes sense to have that on a different channel. So I set up another channel called Music Memories, and you'll see a lot of stuff like my bands that I really love were the Tubes, Alice Cooper, the Boomtown Rats, Kiss, Journey, a bunch of bands from the 80s, some of them eclectic, some of them not. But so a lot of that stuff, I just kind of transitioned from the main channel over to that channel.
I see. That makes sense to do that, to have that kind of compartmentalized. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm not struggling with my cognitive abilities at all. But what's interesting is when I started this channel, one of the very first videos I did was the rise and fall of hair metal.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to actually have to have you on for a third time, maybe after the first of the year or whatever, to talk about music. So, I mean, I'm a huge music geek as well, as a TV geek, as a movie geek, and a retro nostalgic.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure. If you're kind of into one, you're kind of into the other, for sure. I see a guitar back there now behind you.
Yeah.
Do you play guitar?
I do. I strum the guitar. My son plays the guitar.
I see.
But I can, I know that your basic chords, and there's a song or two that as a matter of fact, holiday season, I'll post a link to it in my community thread. But there's a song that I wrote with my brother called "Stupid Stocking Stuffer." It's a holiday jingle about the crap that we got in our Christmas stockings, and so you can hear me play the guitar if you catch that when I post a link to it.
That sounds good. Yeah, let us all know. We will definitely that. Now, you also have, in addition to the YouTube channel, which I didn't know about until after we did our first interview, and that was a podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just the master of repurposing things, right? I just basically take the audio from some of my videos that are older and I am putting that out on a podcast feed. Every once in a while, I'll do something new, or like I'll include, like, along with that audio, I'll include some of the top comments from a particular video, but it's truly a companion to the YouTube channel. And so hopefully if folks like one, they'll enjoy listening to the other. The nice thing about podcasts is you can take it with you, right? You can take it on a walk, that kind of thing, which you can't always do with a YouTube video.
Yeah, I find that the draw for each is really different. The people who are listening to podcasts are listening to podcasts, and the people who are watching YouTube videos are watching YouTube videos.
Yep.
That's kind of what I do here too. You know, this will be, I mean, obviously I'll have it on YouTube, and I'll do some editing for YouTube specifically, but this is more for the audio podcast format. And I have stuff that's exclusive to YouTube that just, it wouldn't transfer over to audio, you know, just you know, pictures and stuff like that really wouldn't quite transfer over to audio specifically. So that's cool. So listen, I did a top 5 TV moms of Generation X, and then I did a top 5 TV dads of Generation X. And then I did, and then I had planned on doing a top 5 TV families of Generation X, because you think that they would kind of go hand in hand a little bit, you know, like if I chose, you know, family ties for one, it'd be family ties across the board, but that doesn't necessarily happen. Doesn't necessarily happen that way. So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about your top 5 and my top 5, and kind of where they agree and where they disagree, and like, yeah, and just kind of like why you would choose that. So we can start anywhere. Let me just start with this idea here. Do you consider the Brady Bunch a Generation X show?
Yeah, that's tough, right? I think if you think about the amount of time that it spent in syndication, in the syndicated markets, in reruns, that Gen X definitely had their fill of the Brady Bunch, but you know, its actual run was late 60s, early 70s. And that's probably, if you think about it, I was born in 64, so that I'm in the tail end. I think I'm the final year of boomers.
Yeah.
I can count myself as a Gen Xer, but I think officially.
Yeah. I think Gen X is 64, actually.
I think it's like boomers call them, say, through 64, and Gen X starts at 64. So I think it is, but I think it's early Gen Xers that probably felt the weight of the Brady's the most.
Right. I certainly did feel the weight of the Brady's. I mean, you know, I struggled with this because I thought, as you create a show, you have an idea of what it is you want it to be, but then you also have like how it morphs and how it changes and it becomes its own show. And I'm struggling with that right now. I'm in the middle of it. And because I thought originally, just growing up, or, you know, all things Gen X. And I'm like, no, this show's about growing up Gen X.
Yeah.
And growing up Gen X, I was just as much watching the Beverly Hillbillies, which was not produced, but that was part of my childhood. And the same is said for a lot of shows, you know, the Andy Griffith Show, and for sure the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
The Brady Bunch was a huge influence on me. I mean, you know, I watched it all the time. It was I don't know if it was really kind of a laugh out loud comedy, or I don't know if it was not a satire. What's the word I'm looking for? It was somewhere in between a comedy and a drama, or a lighthearted drama, or something like that.
Yeah, there were those moments, right? Some of those storylines, even in, you know, definitely later on, when in the actual dramedy, the Brady's, which was in the 90s, I think, like 1990. But with the original show, there still were some very serious subject lines that were covered, you know, more. And because of that, I don't think it was laugh out loud. Really, yeah. I don't recall that. To me, it was more of like, it made me smile. It just was comforting to watch, particularly as a kid. I don't know why, probably because at least at some point in my youth, Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch were on back to back, but neither of those shows did I like. Was I knee slapping and laughing out loud? But they always made me happy. They were so pleasant to watch.
Yeah, they were pleasant, and also I think with that it was an hour long too, wasn't it? As I recall,
No,
yeah,
it was a half hour.
it was
The
a
original
half hour,
Brady.
really.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Shatter my reality.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, like I said, later on we had the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, which ran for a full hour,
Okay.
and then the Brady's, the dramedy that was, I think the critics called it Brady something. It was an hour long as well, but those original Sherwood Schwartz episodes, from the early 70s, they were a half hour long.
Okay. All right. So that would have put him in like a lighthearted sitcom or something like that. But all that said, in my top 5, my 5th position was Carol Brady. I think she was kind of a mother to me. Well, in a way, she was a mother to me. I mean, you definitely had the idea of blended families being brought together, and an interaction between siblings, that weren't related but still had to be a family, and a mother a mother and a father who had to father and mother children who weren't their children. And I think that was a growing trend in Gen X. So she gets my number 5 position as far as TV moms are concerned.
I haven't ranked them out, but I will concur with you that Carol is definitely in my top 5.
Yes, for sure.
And she's probably near 2 or the 1 spot for me. And I guess when I was thinking about this, I really wasn't thinking about sitcoms. So I have some, as I think through top TV moms, some of them were in dramas.
Oh, well, give them to me. Let's, we talk about them. What were some of the TV moms you were thinking
Well, I
of?
will give you 2 because it's similar in theme and in dramas would be Olivia Walton. And, Ma Ingalls. I can't remember. What was her name? Caroline? I think it was Caroline. Caroline Ingalls.
Yeah.
From Little House on the Prairie. So
now you had the girl
2.
from one of the actresses from the Waltons on your show.
Yeah, I had Judy Norton on not too long ago. I was able to connect with her through there's a guy that literally he shoots me a tweet every day asking me for a particular topic. He'll suggest topic after topic after topic, and I keep them all. I've written them all down, and they're in a book, and I go back to them when I don't have any ideas of my own. But he, one of the things that he did was he connected me with Judy Norton. He actually had attached her to one of his tweets, and she started watching my videos because of that. And we were able to connect. So that was fun. Judy, of course, plays Mary Ellen Walton, but Olivia Walton, played by Michael Learned, was just phenomenal. And then I want to say Caroline Ingalls was played. Her name was Karen. Back then, I would have said Grassle, but I think it was actually pronounced Grassley, Grassle. Grassley.
Yeah. Did you have the Waltons Little House on the Prairie competition in your house, or no?
It was a point of consternation for me. I enjoyed both shows, but my sister, I have a sister who's since passed, but that was 10 months younger than me. And so we had this kind of sibling thing going on because we were so close in age. And she loved Little House on the Prairie. Mm-hmm. And I loved Battlestar Galactica. And back when Battlestar Galactica premiered, it was on Sunday evenings. And I grew up in a fairly strict home, very conservative, where we weren't allowed to watch TV on Sundays. And because of that, I wasn't able to watch Battlestar Galactica when it first premiered. And then as it started to flounder in ratings as the year went on, and it didn't hold up those ratings, and that's why it got canceled after 1 year. They moved it to the same night. I want to say Wednesday nights, but the same night as when Little House on the Prairie was on. And so there was this battle
Oh
between me and
no.
my sister for television dominance. And truthfully, she usually won.
Uh, so did
She
that
was,
make you a little resentful towards Little House on the Prairie? Like, we gotta watch this.
well,
Or-
the fact that I remember it still answers your question.
yeah.
But I do recognize it as a great, great show. And,
Yeah.
particularly over the years, I've really come to appreciate pretty much everything that Michael Landon ever had his hand in, whatever, anything he was involved in.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible show. I really enjoyed it. I can't say that even as a kid, it was one of those shows that I looked forward to, but it was in heavy rotation in my house. And then whenever it was on and I sat down in front of the TV to watch it, I certainly enjoyed it. I certainly
Yeah.
enjoyed it. We were not as connected to the Waltons for some reason. It was,
Hmm.
I mean, it came on and we'd
Yeah.
watch it and I didn't hate it or anything like that, but I did, it was just one of those shows that I just didn't watch
Yeah.
that much, just it kind of came on here and there and we'd watch it and, and make
I
fun of
think
it.
that
Good night,
one,
John Boy. Good night.
yeah. I think that one for me actually resonated more. I've always really been a type of storytelling that's appealed to me is that kind of narrator, voiceover, reminiscing kind of thing. And, those were the memories of Earl Hamner Jr. And you have John Boy narrating all of the stories. He usually introduced them. And I really love that style of storytelling that, later on you see it in like The Christmas Story and some of these
Right.
other things. And so I enjoyed them both. Neither of them. I was a big comic book sci-fi geek, so the kind of shows that were my absolute favorite if we
for
weren't
sure.
talking about a situation comedy. But I really enjoyed them, and similar to the Bradys, they were comforting and pleasant to watch,
Yeah. Yeah.
and great TV moms.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. There's a thought that I had there but it's fled away from me now. All right. Well, we will go to the next one. And I said this on my, when I was just doing the videos for it, I said the first two TV moms were going to have a little bit of a controversy because the Brady Bunch, there's a controversy as to whether or not it's in Generation X. And then the next one is going to be a little bit of a controversy because people are going to wonder whether or not it truly is a TV. You could classify it as a TV mom, but she was TV mom like, at least. And that is Edna Garrett from Both Different Strokes and The Facts of Life. For me, it was a mother across the aisle kind of thing, and she, even though she wasn't technically a mother, she played mother to two orphan boys, again. And it was one of those situations where it was a blended family without mentioning divorce. It was like, so you can't have divorce, but you can have somebody die and have a blended family. And then across the aisle with the whole racial tension thing. And then when she went to Eastwood, is it Eastwood? Was that the name?
I don't remember the name of the school. I should, but I don't.
I think it was Eastwood. I could be
Okay.
misremembering that, but she certainly acted like the dorm mom of the kids. So what would be your number 4, or do you have any thoughts on
Well, I do. I love Charlotte. I think Charlotte Ray, right? I think that was
Yes.
the name of the actress that played that, and she's since left us too. She was phenomenal. I don't recall anything that she did prior to Different Strokes and Facts of Life, but she was just so good in both of those shows, and those were shows that we certainly loved watching in our home as well. Maybe it was one of those cases where her character actually grew and she became even more revered and loved as she had her own show and was in the Facts of Life. Just a really great show that got better as the seasons progressed, as it started to focus in on just kind of a quartet of girls and along with Mrs. Garrett. Really love that. I wouldn't have thought of putting her in my top TV moms list because of what you said.
Right.
But, who says moms have to be biological, right? There's so
Right.
many people in this world that end up being pseudo mothers because they're thrown into situations. And that certainly was the case there. Sure, the girls all had their own mom, but Mrs. Garrett was their mom when they were away from home, and she did a heck of a great job. So you'll get no argument from me, my friend.
Well, thank you for that. I remember what I was going to ask you is because you said narration. So then, were you a fan of the Wonder Years,
Oh,
or
love that show.
did you
Yeah.
like it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the Wonder Years. There is narration. I was going to say, I love the Goldbergs now. And, that has the same narrative style with the
Right.
narrators starting with every episode starts with him saying it was 1980 something, and
You're
then
right.
go on. So yeah, I loved both of those shows. I love shows that harken back to another era, another time, which, all of the shows that that I've mentioned, whether it's the Waltons more seriously or the Wonder Years you mentioned, is it's a different time, the 70s.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting to see each generation's representation of the past too, because I think Wonder Years came out in '87 or '88. I can't remember. I know it came out before I moved where I am right now, and I know I moved here in '80, right at the end of '88, '89. So it's interesting to see them at that point talk about the 60s, talk about
Yeah, was it? I was going to ask you, is it late 60s or was it early 70s? Like late 60s?
I think it's late 60s.
Because they do the moonwalk episode. Isn't there an episode where they talk about the moonwalk? That would be late 60s.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the whole Vietnam's kind of they mentioned that. Yeah, you're right.
She did not. However, I did enjoy the show. That was one of those shows that I did like, but it did grind on me a little bit at the time because it was so preachy. That was one of those shows where every episode is like, okay, what's Arnold going to learn this week? Or Kevin. Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin.
His
Same with the Goldbergs, right? Every episode of the Goldbergs, there's a very important lesson to learn about love and family at the end of every episode.
And that's okay. I think that trope, I don't know if they were just trying to reach through the TV and address a generation of people who were either growing up without moms or dads or broken homes or something like that. But it's just seemed to be pretty substantial as we've talked about before. The mother didn't make it on my list though.
Yeah.
I mean, she would have been an honorable mention, but I didn't really connect with her in that way. It wasn't, the parents were almost ancillary,
right.
in that show. It was really about Kevin and him growing up. And unlike, say for example, unlike Family Ties, where some of the shows were about the parents, some of the shows were about Alex, some of the shows were about Mallory, but some of the shows were about the parents. I don't think there was it's hard for me to recall, but I don't think there was an episode about the parents in that show.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably not. Probably not. But to your point, Kevin was the focal point. And I always enjoyed any time Winnie was on as well. Winnie was such a cutie.
Yeah, for sure. She grew
math
up
whiz,
she's
a math whiz now.
Yeah. I saw a book in the bookstore. This is years ago now, but I was just like, that looks like Winnie Cooper. I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's Winnie Cooper. I can't believe it.
She writes books and tries to, the books, I guess, help kids and anyone that's interested in math, kind of make it fun and make it a little easier to understand. Very cool stuff.
Well, do you have another TV mom?
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah. We got tons of TV moms.
Who else would be on your list?
Well, definitely Carol Brady's. We already mentioned her. If we're talking sitcom moms, we've got to go. They would range from Claire Huxtable to Laura Petrie on the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
And my top TV mom would be June Cleaver.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love June Cleaver. We are huge fans of Leave It to Beaver at our house. That goes through heavy rotation, just trying to find something to watch and just like now it's streaming, but we have all the DVDs of the seasons of Leave It. I think that show holds up so well.
It's crazy because I mean it's clearly from a different era, right? But it holds up well. The kids are fun to watch, and there's another I mean I don't know if June and Ward were ever like the focal points of any of the stories, but they were so good as the parents of Wally and Theodore that they both of them will if they're not number one, they're right up there with they're just my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you definitely mentioned my number two position. What was Claire Huxtable?
Yeah.
She seemed to walk this absolute balance of being a TV mother. Of I can't think of a more like balance of discipline and love in a TV family than you did have in the Cosby Show. They you knew where you stood. There wasn't any oh, if I do this I might get away with it. You never got away with it, but it was always a punishment that fit the crime, and it was always resolved in a loving a punishment
Right.
that was a discipline that was executed with the grace that a parent that we all look for in a parent. She did that, and she walked that line too. And I don't know how much of this is just TV magic between being a lawyer and being a mother. She had her foot in both worlds, and it didn't seem to interrupt either world.
Yeah. Awesome. My other one would be just honorary mention, and we're skirting the borders of what is considered a Gen Xer, but I got to give a nod to animated mom Marge Simpson as well, who
oh man, yes,
is so
sure.
awesome. Just the fact that she puts up with Homer and those three kids is enough to get her an honorary mention on my list.
For sure, and for all those years too.
Yeah, decades.
Were you a fan of The Simpsons when it was on the Tracy Ullman Show?
I remember watching it on the Tracy Ullman Show when the show was still in prime time. I think it ran for a couple of years is all, and but those episodes, it's so funny because if you watch them now, they look so rudimentary and crude compared to what you see on The Simpsons these days. And even that first couple of seasons of The Simpsons, it's just the animation style is different. The voices, the actors are still kind of developing their voices, particularly Homer Simpson,
yeah.
Dan Caston. I'm going to butcher his last name. Not even try. Dan C. His Homer really develops over the years. But she's a joy. Marge is a joy, and I truly love her as a mother. Her patience is never ending.
That would definitely get an honorable mention on my list as well. I didn't my number I'll do number 3 and then number 1 and talk about why number 1 won out over against number 2, and then get your thoughts on it. But number 3 was Peg Bundy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she maybe an honorable mention on your list, but she actually ranked at number 3 as far as TV moms were concerned. I liked, when I thought TV moms, I didn't necessarily think, oh, what family do I want to be in? It was more like who I thought was, it was all the whole package, like who was the funniest, what family I wanted to be in. But that, that wasn't the only factor. It was, and her relationship with her kids, the anti-Huxtables was just hilarious.
So much fun. Katie Seagal's great, right? I mean, I've loved her ever since Married with Children. In Futurama, she was one of the voices on that show.
Yeah, for sure.
And now we're enjoying her. My wife and I, we watch The Connors, and she's a recurring character on The Connors now, which is what Roseanne used to be before they gave Ms. Roseanne Barr the boot.
Right. Yeah, I don't watch The Connors as much. I did watch Roseanne when it came out again.
Yeah.
Came out, I did watch that, but I stopped watching because I was just a huge Roseanne Barr fan personally.
Yeah,
I liked her comedy and her stand-up stuff, and not to get too political, but she's
it was
on
heartbreaking.
Connors.
It was heartbreaking that's what happened, and whatever side you lean on, it's too bad. And I think people need to be aware of, when you put something out there in the interwebs, particularly on social media, you got to be careful. It can come back to haunt you years later sometimes.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's unfortunate. unfortunate.
It is because we all make mistakes and we all say dumb things, and hopefully we live, we learn, we move forward, right? And hopefully people have it in their hearts to forgive. And I'm still hoping that at some point we see Roseanne in maybe a flashback episode because they killed her off, but we maybe see her come back to the Connors in some way.
That was one of my, I got into Roseanne later. It was kind of interesting. And I was just like, why didn't I watch this when I was younger? And I actually I just did an episode last week on the connection between the Roseanne show and grunge rock.
Oh, I'll have to check that one out. That sounds good.
Yeah, I kind of see some of the same similarities and the rise of popularity happening at the same time for the same reasons. But yeah, definitely Katie Sagal. And of course, we could spend a whole episode talking about this, but she played a crucial role in Lost, which was my all-time favorite TV drama, hands down. Are you a fan, or are you just like?
So my wife watched all of Lost, but I watched the first little bit of it and then gave up on it. I really, if I feel like, sometimes I just feel like I'm going to get disappointed, and I just bow out. And that was the case with Lost. I don't know how you felt about the ending, but I know she wasn't super tickled with it. What did you think?
I think that I liked it. I did like the ending. I have to say I liked it. It didn't wrap everything up we wanted to wrap up, but I think the relationships were intact, and I think that was the most important part. And I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy the ending. I thought it was.
That's awesome. And sticking with it all those years paid off for you.
It did pay off for me. Okay, so number one TV mom for me is Elise Keaton. That was my number one, and I'll be honest, why it won out a little bit over the Huxtables is due to the fact that because the Huxtables had it all together, and there seemed to be this growth even in the parents on how to handle situations. It's like the Huxtables, you got in trouble, a kid got in trouble or something. They knew what to do. The bounds were set. It was kind of like they were just such a solid family. Where I saw a bit more realism in the way even the parents struggled with how to handle their kids. Like they didn't know exactly when Mallory brought Nick home what to do, and that was true with both Stephen and Elise Keaton. They both got my number one position there. And honestly, if there was a TV mother out there that reminded me most of my mom, it was Elise Keaton. And
well, that's good enough reason right there to have her in the number one slot.
Yes. Yeah. I'm certainly a mama's boy. So that's for sure. But did you notice that? Did you notice that they, they didn't have it as quite together, and it gave it a little bit more sense of realism in their character arcs?
Yeah. And it's, there's similarities between the shows. But you're right. They're very different shows in many ways too. And that's because they told different stories, right? Of different kinds of families. The common theme between both the Cosby Show and Family Ties is just the love that existed in the home, right? That was always a given with the parents. They would often have to do difficult things. Sometimes, you talked earlier about disciplining or whatever, but there was always discipline with love, important lessons. And I certainly thought, boy, Michael Gross and Meredith Baxter, was she Bernie at the time? I can't remember. Anyway, I just thought they were phenomenal actors and really elevated, along with the rest of the cast, elevated that situation comedy and made it something special.
For sure. Now, let me ask you this. If you had a magic, well, of course, so I shouldn't say if you had a magic wand, because we all want to honor our own families. But if you could not live in your family and you could grow up in any TV family, which TV family would you have chosen?
Whoa, that is a tough question, but I love it. Here's the thing that makes it tough for me, though. If I could pick, I want to say I'd go live in Mayberry and be on the Andy Griffith Show, but that would require me not truly having a mom, because Mrs. Sheriff Taylor dies before the first episode ever airs, and Andy's raising Opie as a widower.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if when we start talking about TV dads, and Sheriff Taylor, Andy Griffith, is right up there in terms of the lessons that he had. And Opie did have a pseudo mom. If you want to think about Mrs. Garrett as a mom, I think we have to think about Aunt B stepping into the role of mother for Opie. And she had actually been a pseudo mother for Andy in that backstory, as well as she'd taken care of Andy. So I would probably still stick with that one. I would love to have grown up in Mayberry. Not that Little Woods Cross, Utah wasn't, its own little rurally kind of small town and had a nice feel to it, but Mayberry's something special.
That's awesome. Yeah, that would be a tough call for me too. For hands down, probably my favorite show growing up during that era was Family Ties.
But then you'd have to hang out with Alex P. Keaton, man. I don't know. Could you?
It's what was interesting is we'll talk about TV dads here real quickly, and but I was more like Jason Seaver than Alex P. Keaton. I was more that kid than I was Alex P. Keaton. But who knows? Maybe the young kid Brian grew up more like a Seaver. I don't, I could definitely see myself being the younger protege or whatever. I don't know, but you would have to grow up with Alex. Did Alex grind on your nerves a little bit?
I'm a big Michael J. Fox fan, but the character wasn't someone I readily identified with. So, that uber conservative money kind of character.
That me generation.
And kudos to Michael J. Fox for making him as lovable as he was, given the character that he played. I was, and that was what kind of made it fun too. So I'm sure I could have lived with Alex Keaton, but
he drove everybody crazy. He drove his parents crazy. He drove his sisters crazy.
I think he drove himself crazy. He's just so tightly wound.
Right. That's a good thought, because I'm not sure what I have done with a brother like that. So, maybe it would have inspired me to work harder in school. So at
the very least, we could be calling him and asking him for financial advice, right?
For sure. He might be tight-fisted with advice as well as his money, though. So no, I don't know. Let's do TV dads real quick,
okay.
And let's hear him fly. What are some TV dads for you?
Oh, so I've already mentioned biggies for me would be Andy Griffith or Sheriff Taylor, Andy Taylor, Ward Cleaver, definitely Michael Landon's character in Little House on the Prairie, Charles Ingalls, Fred McMurray and My Three Sons. I'm trying to remember his name. I'm drawing a blank right at the moment, but Fred McMurray and My Three Sons. And definitely, how can you not include Mike Brady? I'm sorry, I have to include Mike Brady. And now I'm going over 5,
It's okay.
Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show. It would definitely, forget all the crap and what's going on with him now. Let's just talk about the character. The character was awesome.
Yeah, the character was great.
Right. And then if you're going to include Peg, I got to include Al. I'm sorry. Al. Yeah. I love Al and I love Homer. I love those they're against type. They're not typically the type of dad you think of, but if you watch enough of either show, The Simpsons or Married with Children, you understand that despite the dysfunction that exists, there's a lot of love that exists in both homes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And they all tended, with the Homer and then with Al Bundy and the Bundys in general, they tended to, um, give each other a hard time, but they let nobody else give them a hard time.
Right. You don't mess with the Bundys.
Yeah, that was just, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't remember. Was it one episode where Al Bundy was showing one of the gentlemen out the door and banged his head next to the door? I think I'm kind of vaguely remembering something like that. Like, here, let me show you to the door. Oops. And then out the door. So yeah, Al Bundy made it on my list as well. I don't know if some of those other ones made it on my list. Mike Brady for sure would have gotten an honorable mention. I think one person that would make an honorable mention is Conrad Bain.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Drummond. Mr. Drummond. I almost forgot about that. Adopting.
The cool thing about Conrad Bain, and I don't know if you have seen my video on Todd Bridges, but the cool thing about Conrad Bain is he really did step up and literally off screen became a pseudo father in particular to Todd Bridges. And
wow,
even through Todd's dark moments, Conrad was there to reach out to him, connect with him, help him when he could. And he did the same with Gary Coleman. But Todd, if you talk with him, I've seen numerous articles where he's credited Conrad Bain for the fact that he's still around.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of that. That's great. Good person off screen as well as on screen.
Top dad on screen and off.
Yeah. Do you think Hollywood though is a little disconnected from reality in the sense that, I mean, I'm thinking about these shows, and I mentioned this before in my what does grunge music and the Roseanne Show have in common? And I mean, I didn't know too many millionaires, or have to be sequestered to private school or something like that.
Well, I definitely think there's a bit of a disconnect. I mean, I think when we turn on the television, they understand that what we're looking for is a bit of an escape.
Yeah,
and so they're not overly concerned with how much reality they're presenting. I think and I think the most successfuls do this is we've talked about this. They convey a feeling, right? They make you feel good. They and if you can create thought-provoking storylines, which I think Family Ties did from time to time, and some other shows where it really make you think and even potentially influence the way the audience understands things. We're not trying to brainwash or anything, but I think that Hollywood does a relatively good job of that from time to time. I think they can go, I think Hollywood gets a bad rap. I've heard it called Holly Weird by some of my channel subscribers, and they get a little bit concerned that Hollywood is trying to push something of a liberal agenda type of thing. But at the end of the day, I think they're there to entertain. And I think, from a realism standpoint, no, not a lot of it isn't very realistic, but
right.
But it's fun. And like I said, to the extent that it can be thought provoking and help us to kind of broaden our understanding and the way we see the world, I think there's benefits there as well.
For sure. Well, one TV dad that made it on my list that the family and nobody else made it on the other list was Jason Seaver, Alan Thicke.
Yeah.
I really, for some reason, even I enjoyed Growing Pains. I watched Growing Pains. I felt as though Growing Pains, it's almost like you have the success and you have the duplication of the success. You have the success of Family Ties, and you go copy, and let's make it about, instead of the kid being bright, let's make it the kid being a cut up, and let's give another brother and one sister. And so in some ways I felt there was a little bit of a copy issue. Same with Mr. Belvedere. But it came into its own. I mean, it really had its own struggles and its own stories, and I really felt as though uh, um, I don't know. I felt as though Jason Seaver was a really good father in the show. I think he did really well in dealing with a son that wasn't all together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I loved that show as well. Did it come out a year or two after then Family Ties? I mean, can you kind of point to that and say, okay, yeah, here Family Ties is successful. Here we go.
Yeah, Family Ties came out in '82, I believe, and I think Growing Pains came out in '86.
Oh,
And
okay, so
Family Ties didn't get super popular until after the Cosby Show got popular, because it came on after the Cosby Show. So then it was popular, people were watching it, but then you had that Thursday night lineup. You had the Cosbys, Family Ties, Cheers, and that court show. What was that show?
Night Court.
Night Court. And that was my Thursday night when I was a kid in the '80s. That was my Thursday night. So
That's great television. That's great television. I've always been a big Alan Thicke fan. I actually watched, he had a variety show, a late night show before called Thick of the Night. That was kind of like a Carson show that played in the, 10:30, 11 o'clock slot before Growing Pains. And and he's a talented guy. He's a talented songwriter. And just, so fan of the show. Plus, not a big Kirk Cameron fan, but I thought Tracy Gold was great. I thought the rest of the cast was wonderful, and it gave us Leo. So
yeah, it did. It gave us the what's that syndrome called, or the trope, where the little kid comes in.
It shows up at the end. The Oliver syndrome.
The Oliver syndrome.
From Oliver and the Brady Bunch. The ratings are declining. Let's bring in a little kid and hopefully he saves the day. That happened with Different Strokes too.
Yep. Yeah. That happened with Family Ties too. With it happened. It happened, I think, twice with what's the show we were just talking? Growing Pains. It happened twice with Growing Pains. It happened with the new little girl, and then Leo. Yeah, character. That was great. Well, okay. One last question, and then I know you got to get going, and I will.
We could just talk all day, couldn't we?
Oh, for sure, man. I love talking with you, brother. I mean, it's really been nice to get to know you. If there was opposite question, if there was one TV family that you would like, somebody put you in and you had to go kicking and screaming, you're like, no, I don't want to go into that family. Is there a TV family you can think of? Maybe that's a tough question off the cuff.
That is off the cuff. There was a show I wish I could look it up. I keep drawing a blank on it. There was a show on ABC a couple of years ago that Marky Post made a guest appearance on, but it was set in the 70s and it was about this family that they had all boys, and there were like 7 boys or something like that. Lasted a single season. And I'm going to kick myself because I can't remember the name right at the moment. If it had only lasted longer, I could remember the name of the show. But I watched a handful of those episodes, and I remember thinking, I would hate to be part of this family, particularly. And then they made a point of it. And again, it was one of those narrated stories where it's the memories of one of the characters. And that family,
I do remember the mother she's been in a few episodes. She was in that asteroid movie she was in that asteroid movie. I know that for sure. She was in that show. I know what show you're talking about. She was also the mother in Dickie Roberts' childhood star.
Was she? I'm going to look it up right now.
Okay.
I'll get you the name of it, but I think they were an Irish family. I know they were Catholic, because that played big into the story.
Sudden Impact. She was in Sudden Impact.
Was she in Sudden Impact?
Yeah, she was one of the crew members on the ship that, no spoilers, I mean, the show's 20 years old, so, that flew into the...
Are we talking about the Clint Eastwood Sudden Impact, or are you talking about Speed?
No. The Sudden... Oh, maybe I'm thinking I'm thinking of the asteroid show.
Oh.
Where it's going to come in, and it's got Elijah Wood in it.
Maybe that was called Sudden Impact, too.
And then they they fly into the asteroid to save the world.
Don't remember.
All right. Well, I'm interested in seeing
The
what
kids are all right.
The kids are. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did I get that right then? Was that or am I thinking of another show?
Let me tell you right now, because I'm looking it up in Wikipedia, and it starred Michael Cudlitz and Mary McCormack as Mike and Peggy Cleary, and then they have a bunch of boys, and the parents are just so worn down. Deep Impact.
Yeah.
That's what the movie was called, Deep Impact.
Deep Impact.
And you are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
She was in Deep Impact. She was in Dickie Roberts, former child star.
I watched about 2 episodes of that.
So you saw it as well. Yeah. That family, I would hate to be part of that family. I'm out on hanging out with the McClarys.
All right, Dave. Let everybody know where they can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, just search Dave Sundstrom. It's Sundstrom. Google, I think I'm the first Dave Sundstrom that comes up, and you'll definitely find me on YouTube if you search that way.
You have a great YouTube channel. I've been a fan I was a fan, I think, well, definitely before you had 100,000 followers. It would come up, and me and my wife would watch your shows on YouTube. So
I'm an acquired taste. It's one of those things where I get people all the time to say you talk too slow, or you sound a little goofy. You sound like Mr. Rogers. Well, all of those things actually kind of seem like compliments to me. So
yeah. You meant it as an insult. I take it as a compliment.
Yep, thank you very much.
Let's play another round of that. All right, my friend, stick with me on the line for a second. I'm going to close out the show. Thanks so much for joining me today on Retro Serial. I'm your host, EC. If you like what we're doing here, please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share it on your favorite social media. It would really, truly mean a lot to me if you did that. Trying to grow here. If you want to take that one extra step and donate some of your hard-earned cash, I'm going to leave a link to the Buy Me a Coffee page in the description below, and connect with me on both platforms. This is a podcast as well as a YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, head on over and listen to this on your podcast while you're driving to work. And if you're only on podcast format, I do have exclusive content on YouTube that doesn't quite transfer over. So, if you like what I'm doing here, then you'll definitely like what I'm doing there. So thanks again, everybody. And we will talk to you all again soon on another episode of Retro Serial.
Hey, everyone. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Retro Serial. And just a reminder, if you're listening to this on podcast form, we do have a YouTube channel. And if you're already on YouTube and you like this video, well, you'll probably like these videos too.